To the parliamentary budget officer now, who did not mince any words this week, tabling an updated fiscal and economic outlook on Thursday. Jason Jacques says the current path of spending is unsustainable, and that's even before large spending items like defense and national projects are fully added in. Well, joining us now is the parliamentary budget officer, Jason Jacques. Mr. Jacques, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Listen, you are obviously sounding alarmed right now about the state of the government's fiscal standing. So I guess I want to begin with a very simple question to you. Are we in trouble?
We're on the path to being in trouble. So that's what our 5-year forecast, the numbers that we released earlier this week, indicate. That if left unchanged, the fiscal path that the government's currently on will definitely result in us being in quite a bit of trouble and having to make some hard decisions.
Now, in getting here, what do you attribute this to? Is this like Donald Trump's trade policies, you know, the roosters coming home to nest, or is this about government spending priorities and not controlling it?
I think it's kind of a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. So there definitely is an impact in comparison to our previous forecast. You can definitely see the impact on the overall growth for the Canadian economy. A larger part of it is the government policy decisions. So there ends up being about $115 billion in net new costs since the last time we prepared a forecast back immediately prior to the election in March 2025. And a good part of that is attributable to defense. So changing geopolitical environment, priorities for the government to increase spending on defense, which we saw that was announced in June, earlier this year in June, and of course on the tax side and the revenue side. So $6 billion a year, so about $30 billion over the next year, plus revenue that we're no longer going to have because the lowest personal rate went from 15 down to 14. Mm-hmm. But yeah, certainly a little bit of both, but certainly at this point, it's more on the government policy side or government initiative side.
Okay, so help me understand this then, because as you say, there was a projection before the election, but we also are getting very clear messaging from the previous government that principle, and the one that they always seem to lean on, of their fiscal guardrails, was ensuring that the deficit would not exceed 1% of GDP. Does that mean to say that that guardrail meant nothing?
I think the guardrail obviously meant something, otherwise they wouldn't have established it. And I'd say like one of the key principles of any guardrail is, again, like when it's simplicity, so you can easily identify it. The second one is flexibility. So when the context changes and when the economic environment changes, potentially owing to factors outside of your control, you have the flexibility to end up changing that guardrail. It doesn't mean that you should eliminate all guardrails, but potentially the guardrail that you'd set previously ends up being a little bit unrealistic.
Okay, so unrealistic in terms of keeping it below 1% of GDP.
At least according to our baseline forecast for the next 5 years, it appears to be unrealistic. I wouldn't, you know what, I'll take that back. It's going to be a challenge for the government to maintain that. Okay. It's not to say they can't, and it would simply increase the amount of pressure around the hard decisions they would have to make in order to get us back to that place.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, this was a Trudeau government guardrail, so we'll have to see what the Carney government does. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, the underlying principle around guardrails, again, different countries have different types of guardrails, have different types of fiscal targets. The most important part is you have fiscal targets, and they're clear, and people understand what they are, both internally within government when they're putting together budgets, and also externally for the public, so they know they can easily assess, is the government on track or is it not on track, to actually respect its original objectives around fiscal management.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you know, when you say that, and I think it bears repeating, that when you look at essentially the number you present this week, there's basically a $17 billion difference between what the expectation of the deficit would be and what it is now being projected as by your office. So when you look at those numbers, though, you've not yet accounted for the national projects, other government programs, nor have you accounted for the fact that the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has asked all his ministers to look at departmental savings. Will those affect your final projection, your prognosis?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've included everything for which we have sufficient detail to actually assess both the likelihood and the likelihood of implementation and the scope of implementation and the likelihood of potential savings or additional spending. If you look on our website right now, there are multiple information requests that we sent in to various ministries across the federal government, asking them for additional details regarding recent announcements that have been made by the government. So in particular, thinking of the $13 billion housing announcement that was made a couple of weekends ago, just asking them for details regarding, well, how are you spending the money? When do you plan on spending the money? What are you going to spend it on? So we can actually incorporate it within the forecast. I think for us, again, we're focused on getting the details around what the plan looks like. A very relevant and other important question for which we're going to have to come up with some sort of answer is how effective will the government be in actually implementing its plans? And in particular with respect to any type of expenditure review or spending reductions.
Okay, quickly running out of time. What is your message then to Canadians right now? With the number that you've found, with your report, what is the takeaway you want Canadians to have?
It's a very serious situation. And it's a serious situation. Canadians' anxiety is well placed. And our numbers in our report simply confirm what everybody knows. And hopefully on November 4th, there'll be more clarity regarding how the government and how Parliament plans to actually solve some of these problems.